Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today, and Amber is in the building on Friday as usual. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. So tell us what's coming up on Rising.
I will. I absolutely will. All right. Coming up on Rising, former presidential candidate Kamala Harris is revealing who her real first choice for vice president was.
Plus, the CDC has an updated MMRV vaccine schedule, but some experts are sounding the alarm.
And Tucker Carlson is issuing a warning after Charlie Kirk's death, apparently over comments made by Attorney General Pam Bondi. But first, Lindsay, tell us what you're seeing in your lens.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's get to it. President Trump has now turned his focus to Memphis, making it the latest city he says needs federal intervention to fight crime. He signed an order alongside Tennessee's Republican Governor Bill Lee to establish a new task force there. Now, Trump compared it to what he already did in Washington, D.C., where more than 2,000 National Guard troops have been stationed for weeks. Here he is discussing the executive order to push this forward.
Very important because of the crime that's going on, not only in Memphis, in many cities, and we're going to take care of all of them, step by step, just like we did in D.C. We have virtually no crime in D.C. right now.
Now, this new task force doesn't just include the Guard. It ropes in the FBI, immigration authorities, U.S. Marshals, and more. And on paper, it looks like a major crime-fighting coalition. But when you scratch the surface, it's really about testing the limits of presidential power, forcing or threatening federal intervention in Democratic-led cities under the banner of, quote, law and order. And the numbers in Memphis don't justify this kind of escalation. Just days before Trump's announcement, the Memphis Police Department reported declines across every single major crime category compared to the same time period in recent years. Now, Memphis Mayor Paul Young made his position pretty clear.
I want to be clear, I did not ask for the National Guard, and I don't think it's the way to drive down crime.
Now, here's another problem. When the president deploys federal agents for street patrols, it doesn't just disrupt cities, it derails the work those agencies were actually created to do. So in Washington, we're already seeing it. As Trump deployment of federal agent there enters the second month, the effects are becoming clear. While crime keeps falling, the other investigative work on the FBI is being delayed, frustrating law enforcement and leading some people to actually quit. Many agents who were once focused on financial fraud or things like public corruption now spend 2 or 3 nights patrolling the streets. That means critical investigations, things like witness interviews, search warrants, and planning meetings are slowing to a crawl. So not only does this militarized approach put soldiers on American streets, it also takes away from the very investigations that actually keep our government accountable and our community safe. That's why this should concern all of us. We're being conditioned to accept the military as a recurring answer to non-emergency problems. And when you normalize soldiers in the street, you normalize executive overreach. The truth is pretty simple. The military should not be policing civilians. So why are we normalizing it? Why are we so quick to welcome soldiers into U.S. cities as a fix for crime? Because this isn't about safety. It's about government power expanding where it really doesn't belong. If the past few years taught us anything, it's this. Once you normalize the extraordinary, you lose your ability to call it out when it becomes the rule. And when it comes to putting soldiers on our streets, we can't afford to play that game.
All right, so Memphis, apparently the next city Trump's looking to go into. He's also talked about going into St. Louis. Now, I think one of the important differences between those cities and D.C., of course, is that there's a Republican governor who actually welcomes the National Guard coming in. So what is your take on, if the governor says that they want the assistance and he agrees with the president, then is that still overreach?
Well, and that's what I think. What we saw and the difference between specifically in Memphis is that the governor was standing right next to him when he signed the executive order and said, come on. And the mayor's like, no, I don't want to see this. But I really think that for the Republican Party, who is largely hands off of local cities and states and likes autonomy and has been campaigning for that for my full lifetime, to see this rabbit hole or this can of worms opened up where we don't have dialogue with local leaders about how to support them in ways that they've been vocal about, whether Democratic or Republican, said we need more funding for certain programs or more police officers. Like literally it's a numbers thing. And if we're not having conversations about how to solve this long term, sending the National Guard in, like even in DC, we're going to see 30 days where obviously the crime will go down. There's more police on the street, there's more National Guard on the street, but then we're going to see it go back or just plateau. Even the homeless population that was pushed out come back, because what's the long-term strategy? There still needs to be coordination, I believe, and not kind of this strict, like, I'm laying the iron fist down, and President Trump just moves forward with things that, the community is not asking for. There's also a whole layer about community relationships and trust. And so if there's a large community that's saying, we're not comfortable with the presence of the National Guard here, then perhaps there's a different way to try to figure out a better solution that doesn't create an unnecessary enemy out of our National Guard.
Well, I am glad to hear you say that apparently Democratic mayors are now asking for more funding for the police, because that was not the case just a few years ago, right? A lot of them were calling for either defunding the police or rerouting police funding to different services. So if they are asking for more police funding now, I think that's good news overall. But really, the problem is not just funding, but also a lack of people who want to be police officers, because there has been an environment created where police officers are really demonized. And in D.C., even as Muriel Bowser rejected calls from the city council to reduce police funding, they still have a shortage of hundreds of officers, which is why the National Guard stepping in is so important. Because speaking to sources on the ground who have seen this firsthand, they talk about how the National Guard's presence has actually freed up the officers who are on the job to be able to focus on really serious issues and serious crime areas like in Southeast or Anacostia, and solve crimes there where previously those issues would have been ignored.
And I think another concern is, because DC is obviously an anomaly, not like any other state, but when we're talking about going after the #1 crime city, my argument from the beginning has been, well, if it's really a national emergency, which DC wasn't even in the top 10, and he's naming Detroit when he was recently in the UK, the president is saying that could be next. He's skipping over several cities in Ohio that are on like the top 5, where he's not even having a conversation, and that governor is Republican and hasn't flat out said he wants troops to come. So if this is really an emergency thing and we're going through top 10, it's almost like he's picking and choosing specific Democratic-led cities to make an example out of them, when he can talk to the governor of Ohio and get some of his cities off that top 10 list. And I just wonder what the strategy is. If it's actually like we're going in order of the top emergency, then fine. In Memphis, have that conversation. The governor has now welcomed you. But otherwise, now the rest of the cities, there's Cleveland, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio. Like, talk to this Republican governor and make it happen. And the Republican governor kind of like is laissez-faire, talk to those mayors. So he's not welcoming, but he's also walking the line saying that this might be a little bit of government overreach without saying it. And so we're kind of seeing that dialogue happen, but not just flat out, because people don't want to go against President Trump, I believe, because they understand that's not, with the base may not settle them and be comfortable for them to continue forward. But couldn't this all be handled, since these are non-emergencies, with dialogue and conversation and collaboration? And I think that those are the key things that are missing from making this a long-term, eventful, and working strategy.
I guess the question, though, is what is the dialogue that's being offered by, let's say, the mayor of Chicago or the mayor of Memphis? What are they asking the Trump administration to do that is reasonably going to bring down crime? And I haven't really seen them throw out any other solutions besides this temporary National Guard assistance. So I think it's fine to have conversations and collaboration, but when you have Mayor Brandon Johnson, for example, saying that he's not going to work with the Trump administration, and he's furious that they're enforcing immigration law, they don't want the National Guard to come in to take on the homicide problem, that just doesn't seem constructive to me.
Right, but then we have a contentious relationship, and we're trying to figure out who to blame first, right? You understand, and we can agree that President Trump has a very direct style and approach of talking to people that doesn't land well with a lot of people. And when you start with force and kind of mention it in D.C. and then have a dialogue with Mayor Muriel Bowser after the fact, then that's what the format has been laid out of what it's going to look like. I'm going to do this, you respond later, oh, it's working, okay, now we talk. When really we could talk first and organize this. And so I think when you don't welcome the conversation on the forefront and expect the mayors to lead presidentially when you're not even doing that, that's a large request when you are where the buck stops for this entire country.
Yeah, I guess I would say that the leadership is just doing it in D.C. because it is the nation's capital. Obviously, they don't have the same rights as a district as cities and states do. So I think the president did lead by choosing to send the National Guard in amidst this massive crime wave. But we obviously agree to disagree on that one. Up next on Rising, Tucker Carlson has a warning for the nation following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We'll be right back.